Well, we had Tom Brady yesterday on the show, who won a few Super Bowls in New England. So did Logan Ryan, both with the Patriots. And we have strongly urged Logan to get into broadcasting. Pivot into broadcasting, please. We love him to see him here today. The former Rutgers Scarlet Knight, third round pick by the Patriots. You know, we had Brady on yesterday, and we were talking a lot about there's a certain competitiveness to be great at what you guys do. Like there's a lot of great athletes, but there's a relentless. The great ones are usually a little smarter and a little more focused and a little more competitive. And Tom said, I don't think I'll be quite as competitive as a broadcaster. But is it, if you go into that space, which I think you're going to, you're built for it, we can see. What are your expectations? Because as a player, if there's a blown coverage, right, a lot of fans don't really understand what happens on a play.
Oh, yeah.
In broadcasting, a bad sentence, let me just warn you, it lasts. How do you view going into broadcasting? Challenge, anxious? How do you want to be viewed as a broadcaster?
Yeah, I think there is a little anxiousness about, man, if I say something the wrong way, then that is documented. Twitter's going to bring it up immediately. I got to deal with the backlash or whatnot. But I view myself, listen, we want broadcasters to be entertaining, right? We want them to inform us and be entertaining. And I think the best thing I can do, better than theatrics, is use my experiences of playing for great coaches, playing in a lot of playoff games, playing in a lot of Super Bowls, and using my unique experiences that I've had and kind of teach you through that, trying to educate. I hope to be educational and informative, and I hope to educate the fan with basic knowledge, like my kids who watch the game, right? Yeah. When Disney did a broadcasting of the game or the Nickelodeon game, right?
Yeah.
At that level, all the way up to the highest level fan. I hope to educate everybody.
We were talking about Jim Harbaugh earlier, and I said Harbaugh is relentless in his preparation, detail, and his competitiveness. You had really different coaches. You had almost an offensive wizard in Shanahan. Mm-hmm. You had the smartest defensive coach ever in Belichick, and a real alpha as a personality, Mike Vrabel. And I think sometimes when I look at a Tomlin or a Vrabel, I may not think they're as schematically as gifted because they're so motivationally good. In Vrabel, again, this is me being unfair. He's a former player.
Right.
Belichick's the academic. But go back to, a guy that you know well, Mike, who I always really appreciated. As a former player, how did he get buy-in from the schemes?
He's really smart. He was a smart player. He was a versatile player. He has championship pedigree. And I think his size, stature.
It matters.
It matters, yeah. I do think a lot of guys looked at him and like, man, you could check my tape of what I did. And he was putting his hands on offensive linemen and defensive linemen in practice in terms of like showing them how to get off a block. Like, hey, I can show you too. I could still do this for a snap or two. But I think Vrabel, what people don't understand is how smart he was. I mean, I think he was, when we had Dean Pease there, right, and that's when Tennessee was going on those runs, right? We went to AFC Championship game and, when I was there. And I think Dean Pease was a wizard because he was with Belichick in New England, and Vrabel played under Dean Pease. I think when those two were there, we were drawing up defenses and changing our defenses from week to week to beat a Baltimore. I mean, we went from beating New England, right, as an underdog in Tom Brady's last game as a Patriot, to then beating the 14-2 Ravens at home when Lamar Jackson won MVP. Completely two different defenses. And Vrabel, as the head coach, has to not only implement that defense with Dean Pease, but also be willing to say, yeah, let's change our defense up. And we give Belichick a lot of credit for doing that in the Super Bowl against the Rams, right? They're a non-zone playing defense the entire year. They have Stephon Gilmore. They have J.C. Jackson. They have Jason McCourty. They play man-to-man every snap. And they go play Sean McVay, which I think is one of the most underrated Super Bowls from a defensive perspective, and run and zone the entire game. And McVay did not see that coming, and that's Jared Goff's last game as a L.A. Ram.
Yeah. The Niners, I've talked about this. They're in a space now where they've got really expensive, great players, many old. And some of those players, like McCaffrey, feels like a pitcher who's thrown 300 innings in 4 straight years. I do feel like there's a sense for me. You're eventually going to have to pay Brock Purdy. Mm-hmm. Trent and Christian, I mean, you can look at the data. They play, they win. But Kittle, Debo, Trent, McCaffrey, those guys get banged up. I kind of feel, and I said this, teams there's arches. You could feel it with Tom Brady. He got frustrated his last 2 years in New England with a lack of playmakers on offense. You could hear him on the sidelines. I do feel like the best version of San Francisco may have been last year. Now, Hufanga comes back at safety. But when you were there, the intellect remains. But do you look at them and wonder, how many snaps does Trent Williams have? How many hits does McCaffrey have? Debo. There are no finesse runs by Debo. There are none.
Yeah.
I look at them as a team that is on the precipice of like moving downhill with injuries. How did you feel there?
I think this is a window right now, and they're in it. And we know with great teams or trying to win championships or try to contend and get to that level year in and year, that takes a toll. It's really hard. You're playing a lot more games than everyone else. You're practicing a full month longer than everyone else, and that adds up. And I think San Fran is right in it, and they know with the roster they have, when they pay Brock Purdy, and they will pay Brock Purdy, that they cannot keep everybody else. So I think that the foundation pieces of what we see, a Kittle, a Debo, a Trent, a Fred, a Bosa, a Hargrave, it's hard to keep all those pieces together for 5-10 years if you're not winning championships. So this is their window right now. They're in it. I think they're right in it. I think last year was a great opportunity. Obviously, we're sick about that. But I think this year, I think they're the team. I think this is their year.
You know, this sounds like it probably is a simplistic question. But you guys give your soul to a team, and then you're traded. And so here you are. You're a Patriot. You're a Titan. And then all of a sudden, you're a Niner. And it's always weird to me. It would be like me being on another network tomorrow. Forget not knowing the executives' names. It's like I can't screw it up and say the wrong network. How do you go from being a committed Titan? How long was it, the drive to work, the team to locker room, to feel like you're part of something and not an outsider? Because it's no other career do we ask you to be loyal to the team, and then you go from United Airlines to Delta in an hour.
Right.
Like, is that hard to get buy-in from them? Was it hard for you to buy into them?
You know, it is really hard, and I think as I got older, I understood. And they'll tell you these words. Well, it's a business. Well, you show up every day to your work, and you got to give a little bit more if you want to be good at it. You can give very little. You can give the least required that your contract allows you to, like basic amount of hours. But we're training all year round. We're eating healthy all year round, or a guy like me is. I'm doing everything I can. I'm trying to lead my teammates. I'm trying to be a really good employee, right? And I felt at most of my places I was a good employee in terms of doing what I was asked to do and going above and beyond in the locker room, off the field, in the community. My kids going to school at these places, my kids having friends, my wife getting settled down in a certain situation, and then a team decides to move on or a different direction. My contract expires, I don't extend.
Did it take you off?
I feel like I failed as a father. I feel like I failed as a man of supporting my family and keeping them stable. Because when I had to move my kids, I'm like, I must not did enough. I should have got another interception. I should have won that one game. But on the other side, to them, it's just a numbers game. It's just a business. So I think that's the hard side of it. And I think great teams need players who care and buy in. But at the same time, great organizations also move on from players when they feel like they need to. And I think sometimes that's hard. It's hard to get that balance, hard to get that buy-in.
It's cold.
And a team like San Francisco has that buy-in right now. Those players really want it. Those players do give a lot. Those players, Fred Warner's working out right now. I know Fred. I call him Freddie Bean after Kobe Bean Bryant. Like, this guy is a tremendous worker. And if Fred Warner ever moved on from San Francisco, that would be terrible to see because of what he does for that organization. So I think it's hard because the players have to give their all to it. And listen, you get rewarded handsomely. But like you said, you're on a different team quickly in a matter of minutes. And you might not even learn from the team. You might learn online before you even know. So those are the things that are really hard on families. Those are things that were hard for me. But that just comes with the business that you're playing in. It's not always a fair business.
Did those Niner players buy into you?
Yeah, I think the Niners players definitely are bought in. Like I said, it's they're playing. They went up against, we went up against a great quarterback in Patrick Mahomes and had a great drive at the end of the game. But
you remember your first day walking into the locker room, San Francisco?
I do. Yeah, I might have said it on here. I walked in on a Tuesday, typical NFL off day. You might have a handful of players in there on an off day. I mean, some guys get out the building because they're there 6 days a week. Maybe 10 guys there on off day, guys who need treatment, guys who are banged up. I say they probably had 30, 40 guys in the weight room working out, all the stars in there working out. I haven't seen anything like that since a couple of New England years was like that. Brady in there and everyone following suit. So Purdy was in there rolling out. Christian was in there squatting. Bosa. Everybody was in there, and I was going for a tryout. I was coming off the cruise, just trying to try out. And I did well enough. Like, "Oh, you make the team?" I said, "I think so." And then, like, 2 weeks later, I'm starting. But I was in there with them every Tuesday as well. So I was like, man, I remember telling my parents and my wife, I'm like, this team's gonna be a special team.
So I got to ask you about Pittsburgh. Howie Long, the Hall of Famer, has a great line. He says, "There's not enough oxygen in a room for two good quarterbacks." They don't have to compete like corners and safeties and linebackers.
Yeah.
So now you got Russell Wilson, super talented Justin Fields. And Russell comes with a brand, a reputation, whatever you think of him, there's a lot of stuff. And Justin Fields is too talented to just sit on the bench. The schedule's brutal. Mm-hmm. So you know Russell's not going to have 16, 17 seamless weeks. That quarterback room, is it going to be weird? Like, quarterback's different. They don't compete. Tom didn't love Garoppolo in the room, and he was Tom Brady. What is that going to be like?
I agree with Howie Long. When you have two starting quarterbacks, that means you don't have one. You have none. I think, Russell has not been playing his best ball. I think he can play better ball, and he will play better ball in Pittsburgh. But you're going to see Justin Fields do something in preseason, and those fans are always be hoping and waiting like, man, maybe Russ had a rough game. Let's put him in. Let's get him in there. So I understand, right? We're talking about football. We're talking about business. We're talking about moving from players and not making long-term commitments as much anymore, and we're looking at analytics. And, hey, if I get two starting quality quarterbacks or guys who were starters in their career for this price, why not put them both on the roster? But I don't know if that works out best for Russ or Justin Fields. So I think you might see a combination of both those guys playing this year, not in terms of let's put them in at Wildcat. I'm just saying I think it might get to the point you put Justin Fields in because I don't know why you get him just to sit there the entire year and do nothing with it at all. So unless Russ comes out and lights the world on fire, which I do think he's going to play well. However, I do think that Baltimore is going to play well, right, with Derrick Henry.
Joe Burrow's back.
And Joe Burrow is back in Cincy. I think that's going to go well. And I think Deshaun Watson needs to show up and play some ball in Cleveland. And Cleveland was a pretty good team last year without him.
Well coached.
So where does Pittsburgh stand in that division? And where does the Pittsburgh quarterback position stand in that division? Is that the fourth best quarterback room in that division? So it's going to be tough.
So you played with Jerod Mayo in New England. Now he's the coach. And for years I would hear that's the next coach. Bill loves him. So, but there is a difference between being a really good player and beloved by Bill and then breaking away and you make all the decisions. That's a big difference. Expectations, growing pains, what do you think? What are his strengths?
Tremendous leader. I mean, I think that's Vrabel's biggest strength, just an alpha leader. I think he's relatable and smart enough to understand the current day player who is different than when he played. I do think he understands these guys. I think he's willing to listen to these guys. These guys are already saying the changes that are already felt around there. And I think that he's a great worker, very smart. I think he's put the time in. I think he has a great relationship with Robert Kraft. And I think that'll allow him to get the patience that is needed to get through this process. Right. I mean, they got to figure out the quarterback position. They drafted a guy in Drake May to help that. So I think they got to figure that position out. If you don't have a quarterback nowadays, you're not winning in general. I think they'll play good defense. They always do up there. But they got to figure out the offense. They got to figure out how to generate some points. And I think his staff is going to have to help him with that because he's not an offensive guy. But I do think he is willing to adjust and listen to other ideas, implement titles, which Bill has not done in a lot of years.
Right.
And I think it's going to be the strength of his staff. So I think what is his coaching staff that he was able to hire? Who wants to work for him, and what can those guys do? I think that's going to be the real tell in New England.
So you, Vrabel, you play with, he becomes a coach, and Jerod Mayo you play with. We're seeing it in the NBA and the NFL. More players are becoming coaches. Did you spot early with Vrabel and with Jerod Mayo, oh, that guy will be a coach? Was there somebody on the Niners that you look at and go, oh, that guy could be a coach? Because I think it's rare.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't think Vrabel would be a coach. I think he joined the Ohio State staff. And I always looked at him as just sort of a big, strong, good-looking guy. And all of a sudden, you start watching their games, and I hear him talk, and I'm like, that guy's pretty brilliant. Jerod Mayo, I heard for years. Did you instinctively know with like a Vrabel in the playing days? Because Vrabel's chugging beers with Tommy.
Yeah.
He didn't feel like a coach to me.
I didn't play with Vrabel. I'm not that old. But yeah, I came right after that era of New England Patriots. I knew of Vrabel, and I always heard about his presence and how he was the guy in the room that demanded a lot from the rookies and wanted things a certain way. And he just had the respect from so many guys, from Teddy Bruschi and guys. I mean, people could think maybe Teddy Bruschi could be a coach. You know, he has that type of personality.
Oh, I love Teddy.
I think do guys want to do it? I think guys can be a coach, but do guys want to dedicate the hours and the time and the job insecurity of, you know, coaches don't coach for long in the NFL. We know that. So do guys want to go take that risk and do it? I think the want to is what makes a great coach. And in terms in my career, a lot of people said that I would be a good coach because I have a knowledge of the game. And I was like, I don't want to work that many hours for what? And I'm moving to some city that I don't ideally maybe want to live into and get fired or start somewhere. So it's kind of like, man, do I want to? Coaches are in that building much longer than players are. They're missing more holidays than players are missing, and you need to have a wife and a family who understands that. And if you've made a certain amount of money, you have a certain amount of peace in your life, why go back into it, I guess is the question.
So early Bill on the documentary could be pretty funny with the press.
Yeah.
Recent Bill roast can be pretty funny. But there was a time in the middle, 10 to 12 years, he lost the humor. He was sort of dismissive. To us. But in those years, maybe it's Spygate. The Boston media could wear anybody out. Mm-hmm. When Bill was seen as hardened and tough and difficult and dismissive, did you notice a personality change, which happens to a lot of people? You get beat up by the press, you lose big games, you're mad at your owner. Like, it's hard. Bill was like GM and coach at the end. What do you make of this return to sort of the fun sense of humor, Bill?
So I was in New England, drafted 2013 to 2016. And I think, you know, during that time we dealt with the Aaron Hernandez situation and Deflategate, right? And I think that a lot of times it was like us against the world type stuff in terms of he kept everything internal. So I think I did see the funny side of Bill that you saw at times. I saw the low lights and stuff he talked about of chewing guys out in film, but I also saw the light-hearted stuff. So I think we had a great time. I had a great time there, won a lot of games. My last game was the Malcolm Butler interception. Yeah. I leave New England, right, now that we get the stage set. I leave New England. The next season is the Philadelphia situation where Malcolm doesn't play in the Super Bowl. Yeah. And when I watched that documentary, I wasn't there right at this point now. So now I'm ex-New England Patriot. And I see the kind of the turn, right, of the political statements coming out from Bill supporting Trump and whatnot, and we said we're not going to talk about anybody's own personal beliefs, right? So I saw how that kind of shook the locker room, like, hey, we don't talk about those things. Why are you talking about those things, right? Fair. And so I started to see, when I saw the documentary, I started to see a change. I played New England, right, in Brady's last game, intercepted him and whatnot, and then so that was kind of the end of the documentary. When we beat New England in that game, I remember I'm friends with the McCourty twins, Deron Harmon, Brady, James White. I mean, you name it. Hightower, Jamie Collins. Those are my guys. Those are guys I've won Super Bowls with, spent a lot of time with on off the field. They all seemed tired. They seemed tired. Like when we won, and I came up to shake their hands and whatnot, I'm thinking, man, they just lost in Foxborough. Like we never lose in Foxborough, not playoff games. And I'm like, oh, they might storm the locker room. They shook my hand and like, congrats, you deserve it, bro. And like, I was just like, that's it. They just seemed defeated in a sense of just, it was some long years. So I did think it got a little dark, but I wasn't there for those times. But when I played them, I felt it. I felt like they were just okay being done because it was just a long couple years, those last couple years.
Listen, I think Pat Riley always said, you get about 10 years and then you need a new voice. And I think Bill, and maybe dogmatic is the wrong thing, but it was sort of a systematic way to do business, sacrifice for the team. But I do think Bill, eventually, he wanted to talk politics, and then Tom eventually wanted to do a commercial and miss a camp. And I think that's human. I always look at the Patriots dynasty, is how lucky was I to watch a 20-year NFL dynasty. Basketball dynasty, I get like 4 years and I'm done.
Yeah.
So to me, I think it was a fitting and predictable conclusion to the biggest sports business in America, is that 20 years I mean, you hug, and that's 3 times the length of a dynasty. If Kansas City gives us 4 more years, just 4 more, I'm not sure it'll count as half of New England. And I feel like Kansas City's dynasty's been lasting for years.
Yeah, they're rolling with Andy Reid and Mahomes. Yeah, I think Bill was he did a great job, if you think about it, of like putting this camp around, right, and not letting cameras inside. Right. There's no, when that last dance, when Brady's last dance footage comes out, it's going to be phenomenal, right? We kind of saw it a little bit, but it's like no cameras were in. You had no idea what was happening, and he just focused on playing ball. It's like the M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Village or whatever, and you're just living a certain way, right, for so many years. Then you just hop out and like, oh, there's a Target across the street. I didn't know. We were living like it was the 1990s.
Right.
But times have changed. People want to talk about political views. Political views got into football.
Yeah.
People want to do commercials. It's okay to have your cell phone in a meeting.
Yeah.
So these things, employees, right, in the workplace, their demands change. I think as a boss, you got to understand that. And I think he did a great job to make time stand still for 20 years and get players to truly focus on what's important, which is executing football. And at the end of the day, political views, all that stuff has nothing to do with playing a football game. And Bill did a great job of getting guys in position to play a football game and win it. But there's a lot of other things in life that we need to talk about at work nowadays, and that's just kind of where we're at nowadays.
I love that. He made time stand still for 20 years. But eventually time breaks through. It just does.
Eventually they look over and it's like, oh, we're not in a village in the middle of the woods. We can have some freedoms,
Logan Ryan. Great seeing you, my man.
Appreciate it.
Always love having you on. Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.